Hola a todos, ¿cómo están? Acá estamos empezando en vivo esta presentación tan pero tan especial que es la del libro Dormir en un mar de estrellas de Christopher Paolini. Miren lo que es este bebé hermoso, súper largo, que es una novela del Fractal Verso que por acá tienen. Ahora Christopher nos va a contar todo sobre esta novela, pero antes quiero hablar muy brevemente. Esta novela se publica en el marco del sello Umbriel, que es el sello de ficción adulta de Ediciones Urano, en donde tenemos autores como Victoria Schwab con La vida invisible de Adi LaRue, Joanna Gutman con El hogar de niñas indeseadas, David Nichols con Dulce despedida. Vamos a estar publicando lo nuevo de Naomi Novik, que se titula Una educación mortal, y tenemos varias sorpresitas para el año que viene, así que estamos súper, pero súper felices de tener Dormir en un mar de estrellas, que es lo más reciente de Christopher Paolini. Como les decía, Christopher es un autor muy conocido dentro del mercado de la literatura juvenil. Él escribió una saga sobre dragones que fue un súper éxito a nivel mundial, la saga Eragon, que seguramente algunos la recuerdan, o quizás recuerden la adaptación cinematográfica que tuvo la película. Y bueno, Dormir en un mar de estrellas es la primera novela para adultos de Christopher, la primera novela de ciencia ficción de Christopher, así que, si les parece, antes de darle la bienvenida, pueden dejar todas las preguntas que quieran en el chat y nosotros las vamos a estar leyendo y transmitiéndoselas a Christopher. Y ahora sí, sin más preámbulos, vamos a darle la bienvenida a Christopher Paolini, a ver si está por ahí. Okay,
Thanks
here you are.
me.
How are you, Christopher?
I'm good.
So, how are you? How are you doing in this particular time in the quarantine? How are you doing your daily life?
I'm writing. I'm working. Honestly, living in the quarantine isn't much different than the way I normally live and work as a writer. So I know it might be a little sad to say, but staying at home and not going out is pretty normal for me.
Okay, but that is a good point. I mean, at least you are used to it, so you don't suffer that much. This, I mean, quarantine, being locked down and everything. So you are the kind of person who could write during the quarantine, right?
Yes, and I enjoy working. I enjoy being by myself and, reading and writing, and it works well for me. The biggest difference is perhaps that I didn't get to go on book tour for To Sleep in a Sea of Stars and meet people all around the world, which I would have liked. But in the meantime, I get to do events like this.
Okay, and this is fun because you can reach people all around the world. Right here, we are with all the Latin American readers. So this is cool. I mean, at least we have technology that can make this happen.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay, Christopher, to start, can you give us a brief introduction about you for the people who don't know you yet?
Sure. For those who don't know, my name is Christopher Paolini. I'm the author of Eragon and the other novels in Inheritance Cycle. My newest book is To Sleep in a Sea of Stars, which is an epic science fiction novel full of spaceships, lasers, aliens, explosions, heartache, and of course, tentacles. I got started back in the late 90s. I was homeschooled. I graduated from school when I was 15, actually, because I never took any summer breaks. And I started writing as a way to entertain myself and to write the sorts of stories I enjoy reading myself. And that led to the publication of Eragon when I was 17 for the self-published version, and then 18 or so for the hardcover edition with Random House.
And how do you feel now, like a couple of years after the Eragon success? I mean, Eragon was a big hit all around the world with the movie. How do you feel now? I mean, looking back at that kid of 17 years?
I wish I could tell him not to worry so much. I mean, it's been an amazing journey, and I've been so happy and privileged to have had so many people reading my books, not just in the United States, but in Europe and Latin America and Asia and all over the world. So, I find it amazing that this journey has happened. And the older I get and the more I learn about the world, the more amazed I become by it. And I'm just feel very fortunate that I get to tell stories as a livelihood. That's my career, is to tell stories.
Yeah. Okay, now let's talk about To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. Here, your brand new book, which is quite long, I need to say. But yes. I mean, this is like, once you start reading, you can't stop. So what can you tell us about this brand new book?
Well, To Sleep in a Sea of Stars is the story of a xenobiologist. So that is a person who studies alien life. And her name is Kira Navarez. She's my main character. And she's part of a survey team that's on an alien moon, preparing it for a new settlement by humans. And over the course of the survey, she ends up discovering something that she really shouldn't have found, an alien artifact. And that ends up leading her on an adventure that sort of takes her across the whole galaxy and transforms not just her, but, humanity in general. And it's my love letter to Sleep is my love letter to the genre of science fiction, just as Eragon was my love letter to fantasy.
And which was the biggest challenge of writing science fiction for you after writing fantasy?
Probably the science. The characters are characters. People are people, unless you're writing a non-human character. But the science was hard because in science fiction, science determines what you can do. It's what tells you how fast you can travel, how the warfare works, how computers work, how medicine works. So everything is dictated by the science. And I had to do a lot of research for that. I ended up doing a solid year of research to get myself to a level where I felt like I could write confidently about, 250 years in the future. The hardest part for me was devising my system of faster than light travel, because if you don't have faster than light travel, it just takes forever to get from one star to the next. But the problem with faster than light travel is, according to physics as we know it, if you can travel faster than light, you can travel through time. And I have nothing against time travel as a storytelling device, but I really didn't want my spaceships to be time machines. So I set myself the goal of finding a system of faster than light travel that hadn't been used by some other sci-fi franchise, that didn't contradict physics as we know it, and didn't allow for time travel. And that took a year. But and all that science isn't the focus of the story. The story is about the characters and their journey and their adventure. So I think if people are afraid of that, they shouldn't be, because all the technical information is in the back of the book. It's not in the story.
Yeah. But I mean, to be honest, I am not a big sci-fi reader, so I was worried when I started reading To Sleep, but I found it very accessible. I mean, it has a lot of information about the world, the science, but it's very accessible to anyone, in that sense, which I find it very cool, because I mean, once you start reading, to be honest, you can't stop. I mean, in spite of the information, maybe at the beginning you need to understand the world, the rules. I mean, this system, which is very solid. I mean, very, very solid. So, I mean, for all the people who is not a big sci-fi reader, I think this one can be a good book to read. Of course, this is science fiction. I mean, it has all the sci-fi elements that you need in a good book, but it's a readable book. So
thank you. Well, and I was trying to do that. I wanted to make sure that someone who isn't a huge science fiction fan could pick up the book, could enjoy it. Because I am a huge science fiction fan, and even for me, there are books within the genre where I open it up, I start reading, and there's so much technical information, or just it's so removed from anything that we're familiar with in our day-to-day lives that I just kind of bounce off of it sometimes. It's like, I'll read it, I'll enjoy it, but it's work, at least to get into the story. It's not easy.
Yeah. And here, I think that one of the strongest points are the characters that, as you said, they are humans, of course. So how was the process of developing characters, humans, and a few of them not humans strictly, but how was that process?
It took as much time as developing the science. I had to think about who these people were. I had to think about, what they loved, what they had lost, what made them cry, what made them laugh. If you know what makes someone cry, and if you know what makes someone laugh, and if you know what makes someone sad, and if you know their, the key moments from their childhood, I think you really do know a person in a lot of ways. So that was as much work as the science. And, and that was actually why it took so long to write the book, because I had the science, but the characters were something I continued to learn and continued to work on, and led me to rewrite the book several times.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Honestly, I really love the characters because they have like many layers. I don't like when you read a novel and you find flat characters, but in this case, I mean, Kira has so many layers. I mean, what she needs to do, what she must do. I mean, all the things that goes through her mind. And what about Gregorovich, a character that I love? What about it? Because it's human, but it's not human. What can you tell us about him?
Grigorovich was definitely my favorite character, aside from
I
Kira.
love
I
him.
mean, he's. I don't want to spoil things necessarily for readers, but let's say he's an augmented human. So he's human, but not as you are familiar with. And to me, he was so much fun to write because he is constrained physically in some ways, but mentally he is the opposite of constrained. He's free and he's wild and he's strange. And it was, for me, it was a wonderful way to sort of talk about how strange the universe is through his personality. Plus, it was just fun as a writer to write some crazy dialogue for him.
Okay, people look after Gregorovich. He's amazing. You will have fun. I will read a few comments in the meantime, so we don't get people bored and they are involved too. We have people from Argentina, we have Francisco, Rocio, Rodrigo Lastreto, we have the people from Peru, we have Joaquin, who is our CEO of the company. He's in the States, he's here too. Okay, here Denise from Argentina, she says, I am fan of the Eragon movie and she doesn't dare to read the books yet. She
Oh,
should do that. She should do that. I
you
think that
should.
the books are much better.
If you enjoy the movie, you will enjoy the book much, much better.
What else? What else? What else? Oh my God, he shaved here, says Aldana.
Yeah, I'm still getting used to it. I miss the beard. The beard will be coming back.
Okay, here, Denise wants to know what inspired you to write To Sleep in the Sea of Stars?
Ooh, I wanted to write the book because the last image of the book was in my head for years. I could see it, I could feel it, and also the scene where Kira finds the alien artifact. And I wanted to somehow share that with you, the readers. I felt this so deeply, and that's what got me to write the book. That, and I'm a huge science fiction fan, and I'm a huge science fan, and I wanted to write a story that talked about the sense of awe and wonder that I feel when I look up at the stars at night and when I think about the future that humanity will have. So that to me was the motivation to write this, and also just to have fun, to write a fun science fiction adventure while perhaps dealing with some larger questions.
Okay, now here Charlotte wants to know if this is a trilogy, duology, or just a standalone.
Yes.
Standalone. Okay.
No. Yes to all of those.
All of those? Okay. So can you explain that a little?
Sure. So the idea for To Sleep in a Sea of Stars is that this is the first book in what I'm calling the Fractal Verse. And the Fractal Verse is, well, the logo is on the back of the Spanish edition. There you go. And this is the Fractal Verse logo as a pin. And actually, you can find this on my website, paolini.net. The pin is for sale. And we also have some beautiful pendants with the logo. And so the Fractal Verse is a setting that I can tell any science fiction story in any present day setting because the Fractal Verse includes the real world. And I did this because I want to have a place to play. I want to have a place to write many, many different stories that interconnect in lots of interesting ways. I've done this with my fantasy. Now I have a way to do it with real world stories also. So To Sleep in a Sea of Stars is both a standalone novel, but also part of a series, and will connect in very interesting ways with other stories that I hope to write and want to write.
Okay, here Julieta wants to know how was the change of writing for YA and now to write for adults? There was some change, or you just wrote the book that you wanted to write?
That's a great question. I'd say that the biggest change is that an adult does not have a natural structure to their lives the way that an adolescent or a teenager does. When you're a teenager, you're going through adolescence. You're going from, to use biblical terms, you're going from a state of innocence to a state of knowledge, from childhood to adulthood. You're going from power, not having any power in your life, to some degree of power in your life. And it's an experience that we all have. It's an experience that is something we are going to go through, we are going through, or we have gone through. So if you write a story about a teenager, you have a natural structure to that story. You know, when is a coming of age story over? When you come of age, when you grow up. When isn't a story about an adult finished? Who knows? You know, the structure is very different. And that was the biggest difference for me. I had to think very, very hard about who Kira was and what her journey and her structure was. Aside from that, there really weren't any big differences. You know, you treat characters the same. You know, maybe the vocabulary is a little bit more adult, but you treat characters the same. And I just do my best to tell the best version of whatever the story is.
Yeah, this is a good point and a good explanation about the structure. You know, in the story, probably that is like the main change, you know. People need to know Kira. Kira is amazing.
Thank you.
This is a random question, Christopher. Which is, or who are the authors that you admire the most? They can be alive or dead, whatever, but...
Ooh, probably too many to name. I mean, there's so many amazing writers in the world, and have been so many amazing writers. I'm immensely fond of Tolstoy and Jane Austen. I love Alexander Dumas. I love Smilla's Sense of Snow by Peter Hogue. I love Dune by Frank Herbert. I love The Number One Ladies Detective Agency by Alexander McCall Smith. I'll read anything as long as it's good. I love Tennyson. I mean, I could go on and on and on. The list is huge. But I love writers who do interesting things with the language and who make me care about the characters and tell, you know, an interesting story with those characters.
And are you the kind of reader who likes to try everything, or you say, okay, maybe romance is not for me, or horror is not for me?
I like trying everything. I may not succeed, but I like trying everything.
Okay, that is cool. And I think that in some way you can see that reflected in your books, you know, because of course the main genre is science fiction, but in the book you have like drama about the daily life of any adult. And that is very cool, you know, because you can relate to the characters or to the scenes from different points of view, you know, which is, I feel that maybe the kind of reader that you are who can read Jane Austen or Alexander Dumas, whatever, I mean, we can see it reflected in a book.
Well, thank you. I mean, I figure that if I'm not trying new things, that I'm failing as an artist.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I have so many questions over here. Okay, let me go to the...
My camera is tilted for some reason. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to figure this out. Every time I use this app, my camera gets tilted. It's very annoying.
No worries. Here, Rocio wants to know if there will be more Eragon books.
Yes, both short story collections and full-size novels.
Okay, here we have Aldana, who says, was it hard to have your sister as your first judge, since you mentioned last time she wasn't happy with the first draft? And were you happy with that draft, or deep down you knew it wasn't that cohesive?
No, I knew it wasn't good, or it wasn't bad. It just wasn't as good as it could be. My sister has an excellent story sense, and so I often listen to her when it comes to editing. And it's very important, if you are an author, to find people in your life who can give you, accurate and helpful feedback on your writing, because you can't really see your own writing. It's like singers. Yeah. Singers, even professional singers, have to have voice coaches, and that helps you improve. So editors are to writers what voice coaches are to singers.
That makes sense. Here I have a very interesting question from Georgina. Do you write for you mostly, or do you write for your readers? I mean, after the success of Eragon, when you started writing to sleep, did you have your readers in mind? Did you have your desires in mind? How was that?
Both. I mean, I have to write for myself. I have to write in a way that makes sense for myself. So I have to understand the story. I have to like the story. I have to respond to it emotionally. But then as I tell the story, I have to take into account how readers are going to respond to the story. Will it be too fast for them, too slow, too gory, too sad, too happy, too whatever? You know, writing is a performance, and I want my writing to be read. So I'm always balancing the performance.
Okay, and here you mentioned that you needed to rewrite the book a couple of times. How was the decision of rewriting the book, and how did you decide which changes you needed to make in the story?
The rewriting process was painful.
I imagine. I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it was painful because it was long. The book is long. So, you know, the published version in English has 308,000 words, which is longer than the first Game of Thrones book. So revision is always difficult, but when a book is that long, even small changes take time. So that was difficult. And then how do you know what to revise? How do you know when you're done revising? It's very simple. You do what the story needs. If the story's not working, you fix what's not working, and that's it. You know, I mean, you stop when you can no longer find ways to improve it, or if you start changing things back to what they used to be, and then that's how you know you're done.
Yeah. Okay, and what can you tell us about the art inside of the book? Here is an example, where it is. Let me put.
There we go. There we go. Yeah. So there are 7 maps in the book, and I did 3 or 4 of them, and the rest of them were done by my amazing assistant, Emanuela. And I'm a big fan of art in books, and especially maps. I love maps. So I wanted to have as many of these in the book as I could. Also, when writing about space and stars, it can be very hard to visualize where things are. You know, even as the writer, I was having difficulty visualizing where things were. You know, how far is this star to this star? Yeah. And it becomes problematic when you look it up and they say, okay, from the solar system to Alpha Centauri is so far. Great, that's not a problem. But then because it's 3-dimensional, you know, where's this other star in relation? It becomes very hard to see in your head. So that's why I have a star map at the beginning of the book, and then lots of maps throughout. So hopefully readers will get a sense of what the book's like and what the world of the story is like.
Yeah, it was very helpful. I mean, to put in a picture how, I mean, distances, structures, and everything. Yeah. So, and now I will ask you a very specific question that for me is like very interesting. At the end of each part, there is like a chapter. I mean, like, which is the sense of that chapter that in some way for me it was like useful because it's like a summary of what happened in the chapters of the part. Do you know what I'm talking about?
The exeunt chapters, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What about, how did you decide to do that in each part of the book?
So the book has a different structure than I've done before. And I've seen readers comment on it that some people like it, some people don't, some people find it different and interesting. And the structure was determined by the technology of the book, the science of the book. You know, the characters take time to travel from one point to another, and there's no way around that. So it's not like it's a transporter or something. They have to actually travel. And I use that travel time as a way to touch on the themes of loneliness for my main character, Kira, themes of personal development, and then, as you said, to sum up the themes of the sections that preceded the travel. The number 7 is very important in the story. There are 6 sections in the book, but if people pay attention, they'll realize there's actually a 7th section in the book, which are the exeunt chapters, the unnumbered chapters. And part of that is because the title of the book itself, you know, To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. It's that idea of that we are all drifting through the universe. We are all floating among the stars. Just even here on Earth, we're floating among the stars, and we are each of us both together and alone. And I think one of the great challenges of life is how we deal with that.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, again, sorry for being reiterative, but I think this is like a key point of the book. Again, this is science fiction, but in this part, I could feel related to here. I mean, in the moments where you are alone, when you're trying to process what is happening in your life, what you want, what decisions are you taking. So for me, I mean, this is science fiction, but much more than a traditional sci-fi book, to be honest.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I use science fiction and fantasy to talk about the things that I deal with in my life and that other people deal with in our lives. Even though I'm writing about spaceships and aliens and adventure, it's still real stuff. It's still, to me, that's what makes fiction worth reading. Yeah. It's why you can have a novel like The Count of Monte Cristo, which is an adventure novel with duels and again, I'll say adventure, daring do, shall we say. But it's about more than that. And hopefully my stories are also.
And how did you decide the title of the book, which is extremely poetic? So how do you
I had the title for the book within 30 minutes of sitting down to the computer and trying to think of a title. To me, the title was always easy. And I've had this title since 2006, 2007. I knew I wanted to do a title that was longer than Eragon, Eldest, Brissinger, Inheritance, the inheritance cycle. So I wanted to set myself apart from that, do something that was longer, adult. And in a lot of ways, the title serves as a summary of the feel of the book for me. So I don't know. And then I wrote a poem to sort of contain the title of the book. And that poem appears in the book itself before section 6. The funny thing is that I've had people asking me online, they're saying, where does that poem come from? I've been Googling, I can't find the authors, because the author in the book is, the author of the poem is called Harrow Glancer. And they're saying, I've been Googling Harrow Glancer, I can't find him. Where'd you find this poem? And I'm like, hey, I wrote it.
You also wrote poetry for To Sleep. You see, you have wrote many things.
A little bit.
Okay, and Christopher, going back to the thing that you first mentioned about the webpage, the material that people can buy there, what can you tell us about all the multimedia material that you can find around To Sleep? Because there are merchandising, music. What can you tell us about it?
So there's a lot of stuff that I wasn't able to do with the inheritance cycle because of the film and the film rights. But for the Fractal Verse, I can do it, and I am doing it. So we have art prints, beautiful, gorgeous, full-color art prints. 2 of them, one of them is alternate art from the book. And we also have a beautiful galaxy fractal that's in the book, but in color. We have pins. We have beautiful jeweled medallions. We have T-shirts, and as you mentioned, music. So the English audio book was read by Jennifer Hale, who was this amazing voice actress, and she did the female lead voice for the Mass Effect video games in English, and she literally has the Guinness World Record for being the most prolific voice actress of all time. And she did the voice of the dragon Saphira in the Eragon video game back in the day. So. But she has a wonderful voice, and at my request, she recorded and sang and wrote a song within the Fractal Verse called Sea of Stars. So if you Google her name or go to YouTube or Amazon Music or Spotify or anywhere else and look for Sea of Stars, Jennifer Hale, you can listen to this song. And again, I think it does a wonderful job of capturing the feel of the world. And we're going to be releasing a lot more material in the Fractal Verse. So, if you're excited about the story, if you enjoy the characters, we'll have lots of cool, fun merch, and then lots more stories and other things in the Fractal Verse.
Are we going to see something else in the Fractal Verse in the near future?
I hope so. I already wrote a fairly long sequel novella. And I'm not quite sure when that's going to see the light of day, but that's written. And then I am currently working on revising a short prequel novel that I wrote in 2013, but I wasn't really happy with it. So now I'm revising it, and the revisions are going well. So when that's done, we'll release that. And I'm trying to think what else here. I also just wrote another short story set within the Fractal Verse, but I can't share it with people quite yet.
Okay, but we have a lot of material coming. So I have many comments here. I mean, I just started the book and I am really engaged. I like the rhythm, the pace of the story. What else? What else? I mean, you have many people who are in love with To Sleep in a Sea of Stars, many people who are discovering you because of this book, which is amazing. People, I will say something in Spanish very briefly. Chicos, recuerden que ya pueden encontrar en Argentina, México, Chile, España, Uruguay el libro que ya está disponible y pronto va a estar llegando a Colombia y a Perú. I was remember them in which country they can already find the book. Basically, it is available in all Latin America, in Spain, and it's coming to Peru and Colombia very, very soon. So everyone will have the chance to put their hands in this amazing, amazing story. So here I have one more question. Do you feel identified with any of your characters? I mean, from To Sleep or Eragon, whatever.
Ooh, well, if we were talking about Eragon, I think it would be a sort of an equal parts mix between Eragon, Murtagh, and Roran. But as I've gotten older, I definitely relate a lot more to Brahm, especially when I had my beard. But for To Sleep in a Sea of Stars, I'd say I relate to all of the characters. You know, in some way or another, they're all part of me. So I love Grigorovich, I love Kira, I love Falcone, I love Hua Yung, I love Sparrow, I love all the characters. So I couldn't pick just one.
Okay, here I have other comment. I mean, our CEO who is reading the book right now, he says, the book is wonderful. You get engaged from the very first page. Christopher described the sceneries and you really feel in that place. I think this book opened a new path. Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, and as was announced a couple of weeks ago, we actually have a movie deal for the book, and my sister and I are currently writing the screenplay.
Okay, and how are you going to write the screenplay for this book? Tell us, please.
Painfully.
Yeah, I imagine. Poor you and poor your sister.
I mean,
to put all this into a movie.
Honestly, it's not as bad as you think. I can't talk about it too much, but most of the story fits into a screenplay, believe it or not. But there was one specific thing we had to figure out how to shorten, because you can do a lot of the character moments fairly quickly. You can do a lot of even the action, you know, you can condense, you can move around. It's fairly easy. Most of the structure can change, but there was one big plot point that we had to move around in order to fit it into a film. But I think if we found a way to do it, and we are preserving the core of the story, which is Kira and her personal journey and transformation, which is, to me, what this is about.
Definitely. We can wait to see that into a movie. And then you need to take holidays after all this writing process and the movie.
No, never. No holidays.
Okay, I will answer in Spanish a few questions about where they can buy the book. A ver, chicos, en Chile ya está disponible en todas las librerías. Busquen en sus librerías del vecindario o en las cadenas. Lo mismo en Argentina, ya está distribuido en todas partes. En España también. México también. Okay, we are going to go for the last two questions, Christopher, and then we are going to let you free. Here, Aldana wants to know, favorite Jane Austen and George Martin book?
Ooh, Jane Austen, I'd say Sense and Sensibility. My mom read it out loud to me when I was young, and so I love the book, and it's incredibly funny when it's read out loud. And here I have to admit to heresy or blasphemy, because I've never actually read any of the Game of Thrones novels. And I started the first one when I was in the middle of editing Inheritance, and it was just too much fantasy all at once. I couldn't handle it. So it's on my shelf. I've done events with George. He's a wonderful guy. I really want to read those books, but I haven't gotten around to it.
Okay. And here someone says, this is so emotional. I have been reading Paolini since I was 15 years. So I am very happy to see him here presenting his new book. So you have many people, I mean, from the Eragon era reading you now.
That's
So,
good.
Christopher, thank you very much for your time, for being here. Thank you for believing in Urano to bring this book into the Spanish language. We are honored and extremely happy to have you. And probably at some point, with this pandemic is over, we will take you on tour to Europe, to Latin America, so you can meet all these people, hopefully someday in the near future.
Well, I've been very happy with how you've published the book. And as I was saying in my other event with you, for those who don't know, I actually finished the first draft of To Sleep in a Sea of Stars while spending a winter in an apartment in Barcelona. So I have a very deep, soft spot in my heart for all of my Spanish readers, whether they're in Latin America or Europe. So just a big, big thank you from me to everyone who reads the book. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy my future ones as much or even more.
Of course, we will. Okay, thank you, Christopher. Take care.
Thank you. Bye. All right. Bye.
Bueno, chicos, ahora sí damos por terminada la presentación de Dormir en un mar de estrellas. Muchas gracias a todos por haber estado, por haber presenciado esta presentación, este evento virtual tan especial para nosotros. Como saben, es un libro que ya está, como les mencioné, disponible en América Latina, en España. Esperamos que lo disfruten mucho. También sé que hay muchos fanáticos también acá presentes que están esperando a Adi Larrue en Latinoamérica de Victoria Schwab. Ya está llegando, así que estén atentos, que muy pronto en las redes de Umbriel van a encontrar toda la información. Si no lo saben, Umbriel Editores, Instagram, Facebook y Twitter van a encontrar todo sobre nuestros lanzamientos, nuestras próximas novedades, entrevistas con autores y demás. Así que bueno, muchas gracias, cuídense mucho y gracias por el apoyo. Un abrazo enorme y cuídense.